My niece was seriously injured in an accident. Despite this, my sister Tracy ran away with my husband, Daniel, and both went missing. 9 years have passed, and during work, I spotted certain individuals. There was no mistake, it was Tracy and Daniel. I'm not sure what business brought them to this hospital, but they seemed unaware of my presence. I froze, unsure of what to do, and eventually they noticed me. I thought, oh no, but it was too late. Tracy and Daniel approached with sickening grins on their faces. Looking closely, Tracy had become strikingly beautiful, clearly having spent a fortune on beauty treatments. She always took care of herself, but this was excessive. Then, with her shiny cheeks contorted, Tracy spoke. "Oh, Susan. Still working hard? Isn't that bad for your skin? Just go home. That's cold. It's been about 10 years, hasn't it? Shouldn't we have more to talk about? Like, that mummy-like child." At that moment, I almost lost my temper. Daniel just stood there silently, his expression unreadable. I wondered what Katie would think if she knew these contemptible people were her biological parents. I hoped she wasn't here, but that wish was in vain. "Are you talking about me?" From behind me, Katie peeked out innocently as if to surprise someone. However, seeing Katie, Tracy lost her words. "Susan, could you handle this, please?" "Yes. It's okay. Thank you. I've been a nurse at this university hospital for nearly 20 years. Considered experienced. I don't brag about it, but I feel quite relied upon. After a day's work, I return home to a completely different, peaceful everyday life. My husband, Daniel, who is 5 years older, and I have no children. But we live a modest and peaceful life." "Hi, Daniel." "Hi, Susan. You're late today." Daniel usually gets home before me and prepares dinner, as he also works for a large company and isn't exactly free with his time. But we manage our roles well. I am truly grateful. I made stew today. I'll reheat it now, so just wait a moment. "Okay, thanks." At the dinner table, we share trivial events of the day. These are our little moments of happiness. One night, as we were dining as usual, the doorbell unexpectedly rang. Who could it be at this hour? I exchanged glances with Daniel. He seemed as clueless as I was. We both stood up and looked at the intercom monitor, where a woman's figure appeared. I hesitated for a moment, recognizing the familiar aura, and then I realized who it was. My sister Tracy had turned up at our house. "Tracy? What happened all of a sudden?" I was left. "Left? What do you mean?" "I found out I'm pregnant, and then." Tracy wasn't married, but I knew she was seeing someone. I didn't realize he was such a selfish man. "After I got pregnant, he told me, you've changed physically. And I can't see you as a woman anymore." And then, he left me. It was more heartless than selfish. To think that someone would abandon a pregnant woman, already vulnerable, is unthinkable. "So, Susan, I have a request. Can I live with you? With this situation, I'm struggling with money." Tracy's income as a freelancer was unstable, and being abandoned made things worse. It was a bit much to ask, but she was my only sister. However, I couldn't decide this on my own. Just as I was about to respond, Daniel, who had been listening behind me, spoke up. "I'm okay with it. I'm worried." Daniel's overly kind nature meant he immediately agreed to let Tracy stay with us. "I agree. Stay with us for a while." Thus, our life as a couple ended temporarily, and our life as three began. Time passed, and eventually, our family of 3 became 4. My niece's name is Katie. She just started elementary school this year and looks adorable with her new backpack. See you. Take care. Be careful. Though I'm not her parent, I take care of Katie with Tracy, feeling somewhat parental. Watching her grow up brings mixed feelings of joy and worry. A parent's sentiment, and naturally, a smile spreads across my face. Meanwhile, Tracy also fulfills her role as a parent, albeit a bit strictly. Fortunately, Daniel and I spoil Katie enough to maintain a good balance. After seeing Katie off to school, I finished preparing for work. Since Tracy is staying with us, She handles the household chores while Daniel and I are out. It was her idea, and it's been a great help. Well, I'm about to leave too. Take care of things. Okay, got it. Bye. With that, I left the house a little after Katie cheerfully said her goodbyes. In the afternoon, as I was performing my usual duties as a nurse, I noticed a commotion in the emergency department. It seemed that a critical patient was being brought in. I gathered some junior staff members and headed downstairs to assess the situation. There, I witnessed something unthinkable. The patient being rushed in was Katie, and she was severely injured, covered in blood. I momentarily forgot my professional role and rushed to her side. Katie. Katie. Can you hear me? My agitation was evident, and though those around me seemed confused, nothing else mattered at the moment. She was barely breathing, but there was still a chance she could be saved. Hurry. Fortunately, Katie managed to cling to life. However, the doctor mentioned that she might have prominent scars on her face. While it's unfortunate for a girl to have facial scars, I was nonetheless grateful that her life was spared. I later learned that Katie was hit by a car whose driver was distracted while she was walking home from school. Daniel and Tracy arrived at the hospital soon after. Katie. Tracy rushed over, but upon seeing Katie's current state, she was at a loss for words. Although Katie had survived, she would bear significant scars, particularly on her face. Initially, Tracy seemed just like any concerned mother. But her demeanor changed drastically when she saw Katie wrapped in bandages, lying on the hospital bed. It was as if her emotions towards Katie had suddenly cooled. Tracy? What's wrong? Nothing. It's good she's safe. Her words lacked any real emotion. She then sat down on a simple chair nearby and just stared at Katie. From that day on, I took care of Katie between my shifts, hoping for her swift recovery. It took some time, but she began to improve and could eventually talk normally. How do you feel? Any pain? No, I'm fine now. When the bandages on her face were finally removed, a large scar remained. Katie would have to live with this reality, and the thought made my heart ache. Meanwhile, Tracy neither visited nor cared for Katie. Had something happened? I felt strange with Tracy's behavior on that day. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Concerned for Katie, I decided to confront Tracy about it once I got home. When I arrived, I noticed the porch light was off. Normally, Daniel or Tracy would be home by this time and have the light on. I used my key to open the door and found the house completely dark, clearly empty. Puzzled, I entered and turned on the lights. There, on the dining table, was a note. Please take care of Katie. Tracy. That was all it said. I stood frozen for what felt like several minutes, unable to comprehend the full meaning of the note. Eventually, it dawned on me, Tracy had abandoned her own daughter. The discomfort I had felt made sense now, and an uncontrollable anger surged within me. Why had Tracy made such a foolish decision? I knew I wouldn't get an answer, but I dialed her number anyway, to no avail. Next, I attempted to call Daniel to report the situation, but he also did not answer. It was then that I realized something. Ever since the day Tracy's attitude had changed, she might have been trying to seduce Daniel. If Daniel had succumbed to her advances, it would explain why neither of them was answering their phones now. I felt like the consequences of turning a blind eye all this time were finally catching up to me. I had been betrayed. After negotiations regarding Katie's custody, some truths came to light. Tracy confessed that seeing Katie injured had triggered memories of her own past struggles. If I have a child with visible scars, I might suffer again. Maybe it's better to live alone. That had been her thought process. Such a rationale for abandoning her own child indicated that Tracy might have eventually given up on parenting anyway. As expected, Tracy had indeed won Daniel over, and their plan had succeeded. My divorce from Daniel was finalized through lawyers. Katie remained in my care. Suddenly, our family of 4 was reduced to just the 2 of us. I've never felt more reassured by my job. I was determined to ensure Katie's happiness and raise her well. 9 years passed, and I moved from being a regular nurse to head nurse. Katie fully recovered physically and grew into a bright, optimistic 15-year-old. The faint scars on her face were a constant reminder of her past ordeal. A source of frustration for me as there was little I could do about it. When the time came to discuss the permanence of her scars and the emotional scars I got, I dreaded the conversation. But despite my worries, Katie remained positive, which relieved me greatly. Wanting her to gain more confidence, I suggested she try acting. Katie, why not try acting? With this scar, I can't. Initially, she was stubborn about her facial scar, but eventually, either charmed by the art or simply worn down, she joined the drama club. Katie soon fell in love with acting, becoming deeply involved, and even secured the lead role. I was thrilled, attending her performances and re-watching the recordings. It remains one of the most touching moments of my life. As her exams approached, Katie reluctantly retired from the club to focus on her studies, whether it was drama or academics. I was relieved she had found something she was passionate about. Then one day, while at work, I spotted certain individuals again. Unmistakably, it was Tracy and Daniel. Why they had come to the hospital was unclear, but they hadn't noticed me. Frozen by the unexpected encounter, I couldn't fathom how they could face coming to this hospital. Then, Dr. Hansen, who had treated Katie 9 years ago, approached and spoke to me. "Is something wrong, Susan?" "No, it's nothing. It doesn't look like nothing. Please, talk to me." Taking comfort in his words, I shared that Tracy and Daniel had come to the hospital. "What? The mother from back then?" Dr. Hansen, unusually angry and tense, looked ready to confront them. "Wait, doctor. I don't want to cause a scene now. Please, calm down. Even so, this isn't something easily forgiven." Before I knew it, I was the one trying to calm the situation. However, it's true that I no longer want to see them. It's clear that nothing good will come from facing them now. No, I'm sorry for overreacting. I should have been the one to be more considerate. I apologize. By the way, what do you think brings them here? I have no idea. They shouldn't have any business with us anymore. Perhaps just some hospital business. While I was exchanging these words within Tracy and Daniel's line of sight, they finally noticed us. I thought, oh no, but it was too late. Tracy and Daniel approached us with their disturbingly gleeful smiles. On closer inspection, Tracy had become stunningly beautiful, obviously having spent a fortune on her appearance. She has always been diligent about her looks, but this was excessive. Then, with her overly shiny cheeks twisted, Tracy spoke up. "Oh Susan, still working hard? Isn't that bad for your skin? What are you doing here?" "Well, this is a hospital, right? We came to see a doctor. Daniel got food poisoning." Her personality seems to have deteriorated significantly over the years. How can someone become so twisted? If you're better now, then leave. That's cold. It's been about 10 years, hasn't it? Don't we have more to talk about? Like, that child who ended up like a mummy. I was on the verge of losing my patience. Daniel, without reproaching her, just silently bowed his head, his expression unreadable. Dr. Hansen seemed at a loss for words too. I wonder what Katie would think if she knew such a despicable person was her biological mother. I hoped she wouldn't be here, but that wish was in vain. "Are you talking about me?" From behind me, Katie peeked out innocently, as if to surprise someone. As it happened, Katie had a reason to visit here today. However, seeing Katie, Tracy lost her next words. Specifically, her gaze was fixed on the shirt Katie was wearing. It was a t-shirt with the logo of a certain theater group, the very group Tracy had auditioned for several times in the past and never succeeded in joining. "Why are you wearing that theater group's shirt?" "Oh, you know about it?" Katie didn't know that her biological mother had longed for the theater and that particular group. It was all a coincidence. Then Tracy, perhaps seeing potential in her daughter, began to look terribly distorted, mixed with sorrow and joy. Daniel stood behind her, dumbfounded. She couldn't easily accept the fact that her own daughter was standing on the stage she had never reached. "I'm sorry, Katie. I'm sorry. So, let's live together again." I'm your mother. But Tracy, far from admitting anything, was trying to exploit the situation. It was too self-serving. And there was another selfish person. I was wrong too. I'm sorry, Katie. Please forgive me. But he was apologizing to the wrong person. He should be apologizing to me first, yet what was he thinking? Watching them, what would Katie think? No matter what Katie might say, I wouldn't allow them to come close to us again. Just as I was about to speak out, Katie did. My mother is only one person. I don't know such flashy people. True to her experience of standing before people, she rejected their odd apologies with a composed demeanor. But they weren't wise enough to back down. Flashy. Why? I'm apologizing so much. You could forgive me. Susan, I'm sorry. I was wrong. And Tracy has been milking me for money. Help me. Their apology at this timing suggested they sensed a future in Katie. And were plotting to resolve some monetary issues. It's too late to apologize, and I don't plan to forgive you. I managed to restrain my rising anger and responded coolly. No matter what they said now, it was all over, and it had nothing to do with Katie. As we were having this fruitless exchange, Dr. Hansen appeared with some nurses. This is a hospital. Please keep quiet. The discharge process is complete. Please take care. It seemed that the claim of illness was true but had already improved. That meant they had no more reason to be here. Unable to say anything back, they reluctantly left the scene. Thank you, Dr. Hansen. You saved us. Not at all. However, if they continue to bother you, that will be troubling. Indeed, it seemed unlikely that those two would back down easily. They would cling to anything they could. But that had nothing to do with Dr. Hansen. I couldn't trouble him further. If that happens, it will be our family's issue. I'll handle it. Thus, the situation was somehow resolved. As Dr. Hansen had predicted, their persistence began. They visited the home they had supposedly left, repeatedly apologizing. Daniel was particularly insistent, barely saying anything beyond "I was wrong" and "forgive me," seemingly not understanding what he had actually done wrong. They might have been financially desperate, but that was none of my concern. Meanwhile, Tracy seemed to have come to terms with herself, starting to talk about what she truly wanted. I've realized what I really wanted was to feel valued. I wanted to be needed by others. But I lost that when I got pregnant. When I saw Katie all bruised, I thought I would be shunned by others again. She confessed honestly, but that didn't justify abandoning her own child. Nor did it excuse her running off with my husband and expecting forgiveness now. It seemed that her seduction of Daniel was driven by her need for validation, not genuine love. Then Daniel, having heard her confession, seemed to have had a change of heart and started to focus more on apologizing and making excuses to me. You heard it. I was deceived. I'm a victim too, aren't I? Can't we live together again? Please forgive me. His words were incoherent. Everything he said seemed insincere, only infuriating me more. Enough. Stop with these trivial excuses. I reached my limit and raised my voice. No matter what you say, I have no intention of forgiving you. Don't ever show your face here again. Are you really not going to forgive me? All of this is the result of your own decisions. I am under no obligation to save you. Then, Katie, who was supposed to be in her room, came out and declared, "You look pathetic. I only have one real parent. I don't need three. Don't come back." With those final words from her, he turned away. Where he disappeared to, nobody knows. Tracy collapsed in tears. The words from her real daughter had evidently struck deep. Perhaps now, real peace might finally come. Thinking so, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion so profound that standing was a struggle. While attending high school, Katie was also making a name for herself as a member of a theater troupe. "Mom, listen. I got the lead role in the next play." "Is that so? You're amazing as always." It wasn't just a coincidence, Katie clearly had a talent for acting. I was incredibly proud of her. "I'll let you know when the performance is scheduled, you have to come watch." Of course, I will. Another thing to look forward to. Speaking of which, there was significant development at my workplace. Susan, would you like to go out for dinner tonight? To my surprise, I had begun to feel affection from Dr. Hansen. Initially shocked, I gradually came to accept it willingly. Yes, I'd love to. My time with Dr. Hansen was calm, vibrant, and most of all, comforting. Being colleagues who saw each other every day. Most things were communicated effortlessly. I genuinely started to hope that this relationship would continue. To be honest, I like you, Susan. Faced with this unexpected confession, the excitement I thought I had gotten used to returned. Am I not bothering you? Bother? Far from it, I felt the same way. No, not at all. In fact, I was about to say the same. Is that so? Good. I'm relieved. After all that has happened, I was worried that you would not want things like this anymore. That is irrelevant. You've been helping out with Katie since she was little. I've always thought about repaying that kindness. Let your words now count as my repayment. Thank you. But I was only doing what I needed to. And so, we officially began our relationship. Realizing this made me feel as if I'd gone back in time, filled with a strange sense of nostalgia. As time passed, Katie became a sophomore in high school. By then, she had come to accept the scars on her face that she had once despised. Besides her activities in the theater, Katie started volunteering in a program that supported children who faced similar circumstances or had complexes. When I first heard about it, I thought it a noble cause, entirely worthy of my daughter. Fortunately, both my and Dr. Hansen's professions shed some light on such initiatives. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Dr. Hansen will surely support you too. Thanks. I'll do my best. And so, I promised to support her fully. We organized events and held workshops for adults, which were quite hectic but now felt enjoyable. Unlike my student days when I quickly grew tired of busy schedules, I now cherished sharing these moments with my daughter. At this point, we often spent holidays with Dr. Hansen, considering remarriage. And he had grown quite fond of Katie too. Even on days when I wasn't available, he would go to watch her plays. I felt truly happy, praying every night that this newfound happiness would last forever.